I'm Kevin McCabe. I'm a cob builder. Spent about the last 20 years repairing cob buildings, and probably the last 15 building new structures of one sort or another. I guess I was sort of turned. Well, originally I was brought up in a cob house in this part of the world in East Devon, a sort of 400-year-old cob house. So I knew it was a very pleasant material to live in. And then we had the chance to buy a very old, run-down house, which is quite close to here, about 22 years ago, which was cob. And it just struck me that what builders had done to it more recently, which what builders tend to do these days, which is stick a cement render on top of chicken wire, isn't how it survived the last 350, 400 years. So, I looked into learning about how more traditional methods of repair, and learned about lime, and applied it to that house. Made quite a few mistakes, but learned a lot, and it kind of progressed from there. Somebody else who wanted a lime plaster, I heard that I could do it, and basically I've never really looked back. Well, that original first cob wall I did on that house was, I did a one-day course with an old guy called Alfie Howard, who is quite well known in the cob building world in these parts. He was about 70 then, and he built with, his parents built with cob back in the 20s, and he was probably the first person in this part of the world to begin the cob revival as well. Cob is very common here. There's 20,000 cob buildings in Devon, so lots of people are aware of it, but it's just not many were sort of building with it. I think mainly because of fashion, when bricks became cheap as much as anything else. But just from that one-day course, that was enough to. I was a builder anyway, so the thing with cob is a lot more to building a house than just the cob. The cob's the easy part, really. But that was enough. I run one-day courses, and I like to think people go away and do something simple like a garden wall, and you gradually build on your experience and confidence, and I'm still experimenting and just stretching the boundaries as often as I can, really. I use a JCB now. I've been building in cob, 15 years or so, and I only got the JCB 2 years ago. Mind you, I'd never look back. It's a perfect tool if you've got the site where you've got accessibility for that kind of size of machine. It just takes all the laborious mixing out of it, and you can still be very creative with it, but just get a heck of a lot more done. Well, I suppose in the first building, I wasn't really sure I could do 2 stories in 1 year. No one had done it before that I was aware of. So I think Alfie Howard had done a 2-story extension, but I think he'd taken 2 years overdoing it. So I thought I could do it, but I was sort of played a little bit safe on the height of the plinth. I started the plinth up at about nearly a metre high, so that the rest of the wall was probably only about 3 metres. I could turn that into feet. Plinth was 3 feet high, and I had about another 10 foot of cob to get to the eaves. Now I'd be quite happy to start the cob a lot lower. Basically, because I find cob such a pleasing medium to work in, I'll do as much as possible in cob and as little as possible stone. It's still a good idea to have, a bit of a plinth. Generally, I'll get away with about 18 inches now. I think that's enough with a decent overhang. For me, the reason to go to that level is efficiency of the space that you're creating. It's the same size roof for 1 story or 10 stories. You could do 10 stories. I would be happy to build a 10-story building. The thing is, you'd be quite pushed in places not to, like on this, we've got the point loads of the beam across the fireplace. That chimney, from the footings, which are quite deep here, to the cap on the chimney is 48 feet high. But that's all built in about 4 months. The thing with going much higher than that, you'd have trouble doing it in 1 season in this country. because you get a lot of rain, and through the winter, it's impractical to build, unless you've got a roof over you. So I think anything more than about probably realistically 4 stories, you'd have trouble getting done in one season. So then you'd have to just protect it over winter. And of course, as soon as you introduce structural members, beams and so forth, without a roof on top, they tend to track water into the wall, give you problems. As soon as you put the main roof trusses up, they track water into the wall just where you need it to be strong. So you've got to be quite quick once you get to that stage, unless you put a temporary roof over the whole building, then you really could go, as I say, probably 10 stories about the maximum. But that's not very pleasing for me because there's a hell of a lot of stairs to go up. I think 3-4 stories. I think probably 3 stories is a comfortable living amount of climbing to do, and it's a very efficient space. The house is quite close to sort of the most efficient shape you could have from a heating point of view would be a sphere, because it's the least surface area to volume to lose the heat out of. And so, I think with the sort of things I'm doing, you're getting close to that. I haven't done an exact roundhouse because actually it's quite a difficult shape to make pleasing kind of usable rooms out of. So I've sort of and also I think every site deserves its own design, really. I haven't got a pattern ideal house in my head. There's stuff I really like a sort of big central fireplace, which holds heat, and I like that running right up through the centre or towards the centre of the building, not necessarily right in the centre. But every site sort of dictates, with whether it be views or access, how you might design the shape. But the reason I've gone 3 stories principally to make the most out of the space available. Well, this whole structure has been designed by an engineer, or at least I might have designed it, but he's checked it all. He's designed all the beam sizes. He's designed the roof structure itself. And there are points where it's quite heavily lit. I mean, basically, cob is incredibly strong compressively. It's in terms of, say, a concrete block, it's about a third as strong as a standard concrete block. It's at least 1 Newton, if that means anything to you, per square millimetre, in terms of compressive strength, which is, considering you generally tend to build quite wide walls anyway in a building which needs to be well insulated, so you can spread the load, any point loads over a bigger area. It's really not an issue, whether it's structurally up to it. I mean, it's easily structurally up to it.